Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Why? Well, Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. Now remember, in the Adam and Eve story, Adam was walking with God to begin with, but then he got all self-conscious and hid behind a bush, and when God came to walk with him, he blamed his wife for his insufficiencies, which I still think that's such an unbelievably comic story. I just can't believe it. It's so absolutely ridiculous. But that's exactly what happened. Well, you have Noah here, and Noah's like another counterpart to some degree to Cain. Noah's a just man, and he walks with God, and so he's oriented properly. And because he's oriented properly, when the flood comes, not only does he manage to get through it as an individual, he manages to get through it with his family, and he roughly saves the world. That's how the story puts it forward. I mean, it's an ark, and it's full of animals, and it's got a child story element to it. In fact, I suspect it probably was a story that was primarily told to children. It's like a fable. But it's a fable with punch, like the Pinocchio story is a fable with punch. It's like, well, yeah, there's going to be a flood. There's always a flood. There's always a flood. So who are you if you want to get through the flood? Well, then you're Noah. You're the thing that builds the boat. You're the thing that acts justly. You're the thing that walks with God. We already know what that means. You identify with the transcendent. That's like Geppetto pointing to the star before the transformation process that occurs with Pinocchio. It's you're identifying with the benevolent spirit of the state. So you have a relationship with the transcendent and the benevolent spirit of the state. And you're also identified with the capacity to generate chaos out of order and the reverse. That's what it means to walk with God, roughly speaking. It's across all of those dimensions. So what does that do? It gives you the power to withstand the flood and to bring people and being itself and civilization along with you. And that's the story of Noah. So it's a precursor. It's another, Abel is a precursor to the idea of the redeeming Messiah, right? Noah is a precursor to the idea of the redeeming Messiah. You could think about them as proto-messiahs or proto-meta-heroes, something like that. And they manifest themselves. They're part of the giants that walked in the past. And they're attempts embodied in story to elucidate the triangle that's at the top of the pyramid, right? The eye that's at the top of the pyramid. So I won't tell you the rest of the Noah story because I don't think it's necessary for us to delve into the more narrative details. But I do want to. So it's a pretty rough, I can point out it's a pretty rough story. Every living substance was destroyed which was upon the face of the ground, both man and cattle and creeping things and the fowl of the heaven. And they were destroyed from the earth. And Noah only remained alive, and they that were with him in the ark. It's a very terrifying story, and it's worth attending to because we are currently in a period of extreme chaos. So, okay, so anyways, works out. God's had enough. He's killed enough. He's killed enough of everything. It's a traumatic occurrence. We can put it that way. The waters recede, and God is done for the time being. And so then this is what happens at the end. So the ark settled down. They're unloading it, and creation is reborn. And so then you think, well, what sets things right again between man and God? And the story says that. Noah built an altar unto the Lord and took of every clean beast and of every clean fowl and offered burnt offerings on the altar. So it's the same idea here. It's the same idea that you started to see emerging in the Cain and Abel story. What is it that sets things right between man and God? Sacrifice. So the flood comes, then Noah makes the proper sacrifices, right? It's part of reestablishing the proper order. He makes the proper sacrifices. And so God is happy with the sacrifices, which is a good thing, given that he's pretty ornery. And the Lord smelled a sweet savor. So remember, I told you before that the reason people thought that this would work was because the smoke would rise up and God would be able to detect whether or not the sacrifice was of high quality. Well, you have it written right there. It's very concretized image of the archetypal spirit, right? The Lord smelled a sweet savor and said in his heart, I will not curse the ground anymore for man's sake. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more every living thing as I have done. So that's pretty nice. Is Noah's sacrifice actually calms down God down to the point where he says, well, I'm not going to wipe everything out again. It's like, well, fair enough, you know, but I would consider it somewhat of a tenuous contract, because we've seen more than one example in the recent century where we came bloody close to wiping everything out again. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. Neither again will I smite any more every living thing as I have done. So, all right, so that's that.